I will ruin you, Morgan, I will ruin you. On the day of the wedding, seeing me return, she asked, "Realized your mistake?" I replied, "I sold this house. Get out." The day my mother-in-law pointed to my bedroom and said coldly, "Starting today, you need to pack up your things and move down to the basement to free this space up for Leo's wedding." I knew every boundary I had was being pushed to its absolute limit. The whole house was a flurry of activity, preparing for the wedding. People bustled in and out. Laughter and conversation echoed through the backyard. No one could have imagined that in just a few minutes, the entire family would witness an argument that would change all our destinies. I stood silently in the middle of the room that had been mine for 6 years. Every curtain, every dresser, every desk and chair had been chosen by me. The cream-colored walls had been repainted to my taste. The large oak bed was a wedding gift from my parents. The work nook by the window was where I had spent countless sleepless nights finishing projects. To others, it was just a room. To me, it was my entire youth and years of relentless effort. My mother-in-law stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Her voice was as hard as a rock. "Did you hear me? Move your things out this afternoon. Leo and his wife will be living in this room." I looked at her and asked calmly, "Why do I have to move?" She scowled, as if in disbelief that I dared to question her. "What do you mean? Why?" "He's getting married. They are planning to start a family soon and can't afford their own place yet. Ethan is his older brother. It's time you two stepped up and made a sacrifice for this family." I took a deep breath. "I don't agree." A sudden silence fell over the house. Relatives who had been arranging appetizers for the wedding reception looked up at us. My mother-in-law took a step forward. "What did you just say?" I said I don't agree. "This has been my and Ethan's bedroom since our wedding day. If you want to renovate another room for Leo, we can discuss it as a family, but I will not agree to move into the basement." Before she could say another word, my brother-in-law, Leo, walked in from the yard. "Cassia, why are you being so difficult? We're just swapping rooms for a few months." I turned to him. "A few months? And then what? We'll see after that," I scoffed. "So you'll never give it back, right?" He scratched the back of his head and laughed. "Well, you and Ethan are older now." Those words stabbed me like a knife. Fine in any room. Then why was it always me who had to move? My mother-in-law immediately shouted. I continued in a calm voice. "I'm not haggling. I just want to be treated fairly." Just then, my husband, Ethan, walked through the gate. My mother-in-law pointed at me. "Your wife doesn't want to give up the room for her younger brother." Ethan turned to me. "Just move, Cassia. What's the big deal?" I looked him straight in the eye. "Do you honestly think that?" He nodded. "Yeah, it's the only really nice room in the house. Leo's getting married. We should give it to him. Just put up with it for a little while." I smiled sadly. "A little while? How long is that?" He was silent for a few seconds, then answered, "Stop trying to calculate everything." I stared at the man I had once trusted more than anyone. On our wedding day, he held my hand and promised to protect me for life. During the days I worked through the night to pay off our debts, he would hug me and say he would make it up to me in the future. And today, because of a single word from his mother, he was ready to kick his own wife out of our room. I asked very quietly, "If your younger sister were treated this way, would you think it was normal?" He frowned. "Don't bring other people into this. I'm only asking you." He started losing his patience. "I already told you. We're just swapping rooms. Why are you making such a big deal out of it?" I laughed. Yes, for him it was just swapping a room, but for me, it was a matter of respect. One of Ethan's aunts spoke up. "Come on, Cassia. Be the bigger person. It's just a room. Don't ruin Leo's big day over some petty real estate drama. We just want peace." I turned to her politely. "If you think it's just real estate drama, how about you let them move into your master bedroom?" The woman's face instantly turned red, and she looked away. My mother-in-law trembled with rage. "How dare you embarrass this family?" I looked at her. "I have never been rude to you, Mom." She jabbed a finger in my face. "We are family. This is our family home now. You wouldn't even have this house if Ethan hadn't married you." I froze. Those words made me feel more sadness than anger. In all 6 years, I never thought a day would come when my kindness would be weaponized against me. When Ethan's family went bankrupt, I was the one who took them in. How many times had this house needed repairs, and I was the one who wrote the check? The money for a new roof, for new flooring, for the air conditioner, the furniture, the property taxes. I never boasted about my contributions. And today, it was all erased with a single phrase. You live in my house. I looked at my husband one last time. Do you think the same way as your mother? He looked down for a couple of seconds, then said, Mom just lost her temper. Just bear with it for a bit. I nodded. So that was it. In his eyes, I should always be the one to endure. I had endured since our wedding day. I endured when his mother berated me. I endured when his brother borrowed money and never paid it back. I endured when the entire family took everything I did for granted. And today, I was supposed to endure again. He said nothing more. His silence hurt more than any shouting. My mother-in-law sneered coldly. If you don't want to move, then get out of this house. The atmosphere turned icy. All the relatives stared at me, some with pity, some with curiosity, and some waiting for me to fall to my knees and beg for forgiveness. I looked around the room one last time. The evening sun was still shining through the window. The coffee cup from that morning, which I hadn't had time to wash, was still on my desk. Everything was painfully familiar. I turned to my mother-in-law. Do you really want me to leave? She snapped. I'll never regret it. I nodded very slightly. Fine, I'll leave. My husband flinched. I didn't look at him. I'm leaving right now. My mother-in-law snorted. If you're leaving, then get lost for good, and don't you dare come back crying and begging for mercy. I went into the room, opened a black suitcase, and silently packed my clothes. No one came in to help me. No one tried to stop me. In the yard, the joyful wedding music was still playing. The only sound in the room was the zip of the suitcase, closing with each heavy pull. As I dragged the suitcase through the living room, I paused for a few seconds, looking at the faces of the people I once called family. No one said a word. I opened the door and walked out. Behind me, my mother-in-law's cold voice called out, You've left, so don't ever come back. I smiled faintly. For the first time in years, I realized that a closing door isn't always an end. Sometimes, it's just the beginning of a truth that those left behind are completely unprepared for. I didn't look back. The suitcase rolled slowly down the driveway. The sound of the wheels grinding on the asphalt was as dry as my soul at that moment. Behind me, the music for the wedding preparations played on. Relatives laughed as if nothing had happened. Not a single person ran after me to stop me. Even the man who once promised to hold my hand for life just stood silently behind the gate. I got into a taxi. The driver looked in the rearview mirror and asked, Where to? I paused for a few seconds. Take me to a hotel near downtown. The car started moving. Through the window, I watched the house grow smaller and smaller behind me. 6 years ago, I had ridden in a similar car to enter that house as a bride. Back then, my heart was full of hope. I believed that if I was sincere, I would be loved. I believed that if I tried hard, any family would eventually become my own. It turned out there are places where you can invest your entire youth but forever remain an outsider. My phone buzzed. It was Ethan. I stared at the screen for a long time, then silenced it. Less than a minute later, he called again. Then again. Finally, he sent a short text. Don't overdo it. The wedding is tomorrow. Come back. We'll talk later. I laughed. In his eyes, the fact that I had been kicked out of the house was just me overdoing it. Not a word of apology. Not a single question about where I was. Not one reproach toward his mother for throwing her daughter-in-law out onto the street. The only thing he cared about was his brother's wedding. I blocked his number. All the feelings inside me seemed to turn to ice. Arriving at the hotel, I checked into a room and set down my suitcase. The room was just under 300 square feet. For some reason, it felt like a space where I could finally breathe. At least here, no one would tell me to give up my space. No one would see my efforts as an obligation. No one would force me to stay silent for the sake of family. I sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time in years, the room was unnervingly quiet, and the silence brought back memories. The day I met Ethan, He was just a junior sales manager. His salary was modest, his family was ordinary, but he was kind and always took care of me. My parents had asked, "Have you thought this through?" I nodded. "I need someone who will love me." My father smiled. "If this is your choice, we respect it." On our wedding day, my parents gave me a very large sum of money. My father pulled me aside and said, "This isn't for a flashy honeymoon. This is a down payment gift. We want to make sure you always have a solid asset in your own name, just in case." I kept that money very carefully. 3 months after our wedding, the house the whole family was renting was put up for sale by the old owners. My mother-in-law was thrilled. She said, "If only we had the money to buy it." Ethan just sighed. Where would we get that kind of money? That night, I took all the money my parents had given me and added my own years of savings. I told my husband, "Let's buy this house." He was surprised. "You have that much money?" I smiled. "We're a little short. We'll take out a mortgage, and then we'll pay it off together." He hugged me. "Thank you." When we were signing the closing papers, the escrow agent asked, "Whose name is going on the deed?" I looked at my husband. He smiled. "It's your down payment gift from your parents. Let the house be titled in your name as sole and separate property. We're married. It's practically ours anyway." At the time, I was touched, thinking he wasn't materialistic. Looking back now, I see how ironic life can be. After buying the house, I was the one who made most of the mortgage payments each month. Ethan's salary was only enough for daily expenses. I never complained. There was a time when my company was going through layoffs. I worked late into the night, took on freelance projects, and didn't rest on weekends. There were months when I slept only 4 hours a night. I brought all the money I earned into the family. My mother-in-law always praised me. Our daughter-in-law is so capable. But those praises only came when she needed money. Once, the roof was leaking badly, and I spent almost $15,000 to get it fixed. She laughed while telling the neighbors, "Look how we managed to repair the house." I heard it and just smiled, not wanting to argue. Another time, Leo got into a car accident. He called me in tears. "Cassia, help me. I don't have the money to pay for the damages." I withdrew nearly $8,000 and gave it to him that day. After that, no one ever mentioned paying it back. When I gently brought it up, my mother-in-law immediately said, "We're family. Why keep track of such things?" And the matter was dropped. I kept working, kept earning, kept considering my husband's family my own. And what did I get in return? Dinners where my hard work was taken for granted. Leo's entitlement, which I was expected to tolerate. Phrases like, "A daughter-in-law must know how to sacrifice." "A daughter-in-law must think of her husband's family." "A daughter-in-law must endure a little." At first, I believed it. Then I realized, the one who always sacrifices is eventually taken for granted. Once, I had a high fever but still managed to cook dinner for everyone. After the meal, my mother-in-law didn't ask how I was feeling. She just slid a stack of bills across the table and said, "Don't forget to pay for Leo's wedding catering deposit by tomorrow." No one asked if I had taken any medicine. Another time, I was promoted to a manager position with a salary increase of almost double. I joyfully shared the news. My mother-in-law just smirked. "That's great. Since you're making more, you can cover Leo's car payments now. When you married into this family, you promised to be a team player. Stop being so selfish." And Ethan just said, "That's my smart girl." And everything went back to the way it was. He never once stood up to his mother and said, "Mom, don't demand so much from my wife." Not once. I opened my suitcase. Inside was our framed wedding photo. I picked it up. In the picture, we were both smiling happily. I gently traced my finger over my own face. The girl in that photo could never have imagined that 6 years later, her husband's family would throw her out of the very house she bought with her own money. The phone rang again. This time, it was my mom. "Honey, where are you?" I tried to keep my voice normal. "I'm on a work trip for a couple of days." She paused. "I gave birth to you. I only need to hear your voice to know you're crying." And then, my tears finally broke through. I told her everything. On the other end of the line, there was only a heavy sigh. My mom said very slowly, "If that place no longer considers you family, then you should no longer consider it your home." Those words awakened something in me. That's right. Why should I keep clinging to a place that had rejected me so many times? I wiped my tears, opened my laptop, went into my email, and found all the documents related to the house. Then I opened my contacts and stopped at the name of a person I hadn't spoken to in a long time. It was Mr. Davies, the lawyer who had handled the purchase of the house for me all those years ago. I pressed the call button. He answered quickly. "Hello, Cassia. It's been a while." I took a deep breath. "Mr. Davies, I need you to review all the documents for the house, and I want to know what the procedure is if I decide to sell it right now." He paused for a few seconds, then replied, "Of course. Bring all the originals to my office tomorrow. I'll get everything prepared as quickly as possible." I put the phone down. Outside, the city lights had begun to glow. For the first time in years, I was no longer thinking about how to please my husband's family. I was thinking of only one thing. It was time to take back what was rightfully mine. The next morning, I woke up very early. I had barely slept. Not because I missed that house, but because my mind was racing. For 6 years, I had tried to keep the peace. Every time I was treated unfairly, I told myself to endure it. But the more I endured, the more they saw me as weak. The more I sacrificed, the more they considered it my duty. Now, I no longer wanted to prove I was a good daughter-in-law. I just wanted to live the life I deserved. I put on a simple, tailored beige pantsuit and placed all the documents in a leather folder. I had kept every paper meticulously. The purchase agreement, payment receipts, the title deed, the mortgage documents, the certificate of full loan repayment. Everything was in perfect condition. When I walked into the law office, I saw Mr. Davies for the first time in almost 6 years. He stood up and shook my hand. "Long time no see. You've changed." I smiled faintly. "For the better or for the worse?" He looked at me for a couple of seconds and replied, "There's more weariness in your eyes than before." I said nothing. He gestured for me to sit and began to open the folder. The more he looked, the more he nodded. After about half an hour, he closed it. "All the documents are in perfect order. No issues at all." I asked quietly, "And if I want to sell the house now?" He looked me straight in the eye. "Are you sure you want to sell it?" I nodded. "Yes." He thought for a moment. "From a legal standpoint, the house is titled solely in your name. It's your sole and separate property. There are no registered disputes against it. The transfer of rights is completely legal." I remained silent. Though I already knew the answer, hearing the confirmation from a lawyer was a huge relief. Mr. Davies then asked, "Does your family know about this?" I shook my head. "No. They've always assumed the house belongs to their son." He looked slightly surprised. "In all these years, they never once looked at the paperwork?" I gave a bitter smile. "No one cared. They just assumed that, since their son got married, everything in the house belonged to him." Mr. Davies shook his head. "That kind of assumption can be very costly." I looked out the window. People were bustling on the street below. My husband's family was probably absorbed in wedding preparations. My mother-in-law was likely gloating about finally driving me out. She probably thought I would come back in a few days, apologizing. It would never occur to her that the person who left this time was no longer that patient daughter-in-law. Mr. Davies opened his laptop. "If you want to sell quickly, I can recommend a few clients who are looking for a house in that area. Prices have gone up significantly since you bought it." I nodded. "Please help me with that. I only have one condition. Everything must be kept strictly confidential." He looked at me. "Afraid they'll cause trouble?" I smiled. "I just don't want to listen to pointless arguments. Let the law handle it." He nodded. "Understood. I'll contact them this afternoon." Leaving the law office, I didn't go back to the hotel but went to work. My colleagues greeted me cheerfully. "Oh, you're back. We haven't seen you for a couple of days." I just smiled. Had some personal matters to attend to. Walking into my office, I felt a surprising sense of calm. Here, No one cared whose daughter-in-law I was. No one forced me to sacrifice. People only looked at my abilities and my efforts. This was where I felt respected. At lunch, while reviewing reports, my phone rang. It was Ethan. This time, I answered. His voice came through. "Where are you? What are you doing?" He sighed. "Are you still mad?" I answered calmly. "Do you think I should be happy?" He was silent for a few seconds. "Mom was just on edge yesterday. She's just stressed about Leo's wedding. Don't hold a grudge." I asked, "And what about you? Do you realize you were wrong?" The line went silent. After a moment, he said, "You need to understand our family, too." I scoffed. "So, you still think I'm the one who needs to understand you? But your family has no obligation to understand me?" He started to get irritated. "Okay, let's just forget it. The wedding's tomorrow. Come on. Let's have a good time," I asked slowly. "In what capacity do you want me to come? As a daughter-in-law or as a servant?" He got angry. "What are you talking about?" I replied, "Nothing," and hung up. For the first time, I didn't feel a shred of guilt for ending the conversation. That afternoon, Mr. Davies called back. "Do you have some time? A client wants to see the house." I was a bit surprised. "So quickly?" He laughed. "Your house is in a great location with a reasonable price. Many people are interested. If you agree, I can arrange a meeting for this evening." I agreed. The meeting took place in a cafe. A middle-aged couple arrived. They were polite and spoke with sincerity. The husband, David, said, "We've been looking for a house in this area for 6 months. Yours was recommended, so we'd like to take a look." I told them honestly, "My family is currently living in the house. If you want to see the inside, you'll have to wait a few days." His wife, Helen, smiled. "That's no problem. We trust our lawyer. The main thing is that the paperwork is clean." Mr. Davies handed them all the documents for review. David studied them very carefully. After about 15 minutes, he looked up. "I really like this house. If everything is as described, I'd like to make a deposit right now." I was a bit taken aback. Everything was happening faster than I had anticipated. Mr. Davies looked at me. "It's your decision." I looked at the cold coffee in front of me. Images flashed through my mind. The nights spent working, the months I saved every penny to pay off debts, the moments of neglect, the arguments, and finally, my mother-in-law's icy words. "If you don't want to give it up, get out of this house." I raised my head. "Okay, I agree to sell." The man smiled and immediately took out an envelope. "Here's the deposit. I hope you'll keep your word." I signed the deposit agreement. Putting the pen down, I realized I had officially closed a 6-year chapter of my life as a daughter-in-law. That evening, back at the hotel, I received a barrage of messages from my mother-in-law, from Leo, and from several relatives. The content was the same. "Come early tomorrow to help with wedding prep. Stop being angry. We're family." I read them all and silently turned off the screen. None of them knew that just a few hours ago, I had signed the first paper that would lead to a change their family couldn't even imagine. In the quiet hotel room, I put the deposit agreement in a drawer. It had started to rain outside. The drops tapped gently against the glass. I stood for a long time, looking into the darkness. For the first time in years, I no longer felt trapped in this marriage, because I understood. When a person stops letting others walk all over them, the scales of power begin to shift. 2 days later, Mr. Davies and I went to the title company to finalize the most important formalities. All the documents were ready. The buyers, David and Helen, arrived on time. They were both business owners, speaking calmly and clearly. After our first meeting, they had driven by the house and decided not to change their minds. David smiled. "Don't worry, we really love the house." I nodded. "I hope you have many happy memories there." As soon as I said those words, a small pang hit my chest. For 6 years, I had also thought I would grow old in that house. I imagined having a small yard with flowers, a room for a future child, how my husband and I would sit on the porch in the evenings drinking tea. It turned out I was the only one holding on to those dreams. For my husband's family, the house was just a thing they believed belonged to them. The closing agent read out each clause. I listened very carefully. Not because I was nervous, but because I wanted to be sure everything was transparent. When the final contract was placed in front of me, "Mr." Davies said quietly. "Read it one more time." I scanned every page. Owner's name, mine. Buyer's name, David. The transfer date was set for the day right after Leo's wedding. It was the perfect moment. I signed my name firmly and confidently, without hesitation. David signed immediately after. The agent stamped each copy with a seal. The sound of the stamp was quiet, but in my soul, it echoed like a slamming door. The remaining sum was quickly wired to my account. My phone buzzed with the deposit notification. I looked at the numbers on the screen and silently put the phone away, not out of joy, but because I knew this money was the fruit of many years of hard work. It had always been mine. I wasn't taking anything from anyone. David turned to me and asked, "Do you need time to move out?" I smiled. "I only have a few personal items left. You can take the rest as is." He nodded. "I'd like to ask you for a favor." I looked at him. "I'm listening." "Your relative's wedding is still happening there, right?" he asked. I nodded. He smiled slightly. "Then I'll let them finish their celebration. We'll come to take possession of the house tomorrow morning." I thought for a few seconds and said, "If possible, let's go there together, on the day of the wedding." He was a bit surprised. "What do you mean?" I answered calmly. "I want everything to end on that specific day." He looked at me for a long moment, then gave a slight nod. "All right. I'll come with my lawyer. Everything will be done by the book." After leaving the closing, Mr. Davies and I went to lunch. He looked at me and asked, "No regrets?" I shook my head. "If you had asked me a couple of years ago, maybe I would have said yes, but not now." He smiled. "You really have changed." I looked at the glass of water in front of me. People only change after they've been through too many disappointments. In the afternoon, I returned to the hotel. As soon as I opened the door to my room, the phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. I stared at the screen for a second, and then answered. Her voice boomed from the other end. "Come early tomorrow. There's still so much to do." I asked, "Why are you calling me?" She snapped back. "To prepare the banquet, to clean, to greet guests." "You're the daughter-in-law. You should know your duties." I chuckled quietly. "I thought you already kicked me out," she snorted. "I kicked you out, but you're still responsible for your brother's wedding," I asked slowly. "And if I don't come?" Her voice instantly turned sharp. "If you don't come, don't be surprised by what happens," I answered calmly. "Don't worry. I'm not offended at anyone." With that, I hung up. Less than 5 minutes later, Ethan called. He started in a softer tone than usual. "Cassia, come back tomorrow. Mom's just angry. Just put up with it for one day." I asked, "Are you calling because you miss me? Or because you're short on helping hands?" He paused, then replied, "What are you imagining? I just want peace in the family." I gave a bitter laugh. "Peace at the expense of me tolerating everything, right?" He sighed. "Don't say that. Come back, and after the wedding, I'll talk to Mom." I asked, "In 6 years? Have you ever done that?" Absolute silence on the other end. I said quietly, "You don't have to," and hung up. That evening, I opened social media. There were many photos of the wedding preparations. Leo was trying on his suit. My mother-in-law was smiling happily. The relatives were all gathered. Someone had even taken a picture of my room, the bed I bought, the wardrobe I chose, the curtains I hung. It was all covered with red, festive bedding. The caption read, "The Newlyweds' Room." I looked at it for a long time and smiled. None of them knew that this room no longer belonged to them. That same night, Mr. Davies sent a message. "All formalities are settled. The new owner will take possession of the house strictly according to plan." I replied very briefly, "Thank you." Shortly after, David also wrote, "We've prepared everything. We'll be there on time." I looked at the clock. Less than 24 hours remained. The day my husband's family was most looking forward to. The day they believed would open a new life for the younger son. The day my mother-in-law could boast to her relatives. But for me, it would be the day the whole truth would come out. The next morning, the whole city was bathed in bright sunlight. The hotel I was staying in overlooked a wide avenue. I drew back the curtains and took a deep breath. Notifications flooded my phone. Wedding photos, videos of the bride's arrival, congratulations, laughter. It was all bustle and joy. I calmly opened my folder. Inside was the deed of transfer, the receipt for full payment, the handover agreement, and the keys to the house. I carefully placed it all in my handbag, then put on an elegant white dress and applied light makeup, not to impress anyone, but to walk into this day with my head held high. As I was about to leave the hotel, my phone vibrated again. This time it was a text from Leo. "Cassia, come early. Stop pouting. The guests are all here." Mom's cooled down. I looked at the message, and the corners of my lips twitched slightly. They still thought I would come back. Just like always. Come back to swallow my pride. Come back to serve. Come back to continue living as if I hadn't been thrown out of the house. But they didn't know that this time, it wasn't the meek daughter-in-law who had meekly rolled her suitcase out the gate who was returning. This time, the only person with the right to decide who had to leave that house was coming back. On the morning of the wedding, the entire street leading to the house was lined with cars. Wedding ribbons were everywhere. The music was playing at full blast. Guests came and went, all praising my mother-in-law's family for the excellent preparations. Looking from the outside, no one could have guessed that in just a few hours, this place would become the epicenter of a shock that would leave everyone stunned. I didn't rush. I sat in a cafe across the street. A few hundred feet away, through the glass window, the gate of the house was clearly visible. My handbag with all the documents lay beside me. A message from David lit up my phone. "We're on our way. We'll be there in about 40 minutes. I replied very briefly. Everything is on schedule. Putting my phone down, I calmly sipped my coffee. For years, I had always been the busiest one. Whenever my husband's family had an event, I was up at the crack of dawn to go to the market, cook, clean, greet guests, wash dishes, and tidy up. While everyone else chatted merrily, I was spinning around in the kitchen. When the guests left, I would be cleaning until late at night. But today, for the first time, I could just sit calmly. No one was ordering me around. No one was yelling at me. No one was taking my presence for granted. Around 10 a.m., the wedding procession began to return. The sound of party poppers, music, and cheers filled the entire street. I watched the bride get out of the car, a very young woman with a very happy face. I suddenly felt sorry for her. She was probably just like me 6 years ago, believing that if she loved sincerely, she would be loved in return. It was a shame she didn't know what kind of family she was about to enter. Closer to noon, I stood up, paid my bill, and slowly walked toward the house. Every step was confident. There was no more trembling. At the gate, a few relatives saw me and began to whisper, "The daughter-in-law is back. We thought she was gone for good." But I guess she realized her mistake and came back. Someone even snickered. That's how women are. They get mad for a bit, but they always come back. I just smiled and said nothing as I entered the yard. The guests had already filled all the tables. Glasses were clinking. My mother-in-law was in a burgundy evening gown, her face beaming. As soon as she saw me, a smug, victorious smile appeared on her lips. She deliberately said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Realized your mistake, have you?" Finally decided to come back. The entire yard fell silent instantly. Dozens of eyes turned to me. Everyone was waiting for my reaction. Before I could answer, Ethan's uncle chimed in. "We're all family. What's past is past." Another guest added with a laugh. "A daughter-in-law should know how to give in. Don't spoil the fun on the wedding day." I remained calm, looking directly at my mother-in-law. She took a few steps forward, her voice dripping with mockery. "I knew you'd come crawling back. Once you stepped out that door, you realized there's no better place than your husband's home. Since you've realized your mistake, go to the kitchen and help out. We're short on hands for serving." I stared at her for a long time. Over 6 years, I had grown too accustomed to that commanding tone. But today, every word she said only made me want to laugh. Just then, my husband came out of the house. Seeing me, he sighed with relief. "Thank God. I thought you weren't coming." He came closer and lowered his voice. "Let's forget everything, okay? Let's just celebrate today." After the wedding, I'll talk to Mom, I asked. And what will you say to her? He hesitated. I'll tell her not to be angry anymore. I scoffed quietly. Again, just that she shouldn't be angry. Not an admission of guilt. He looked at me. Don't put everyone in an awkward position. There are a lot of guests here, I replied. Don't worry. I won't put anyone in an awkward position. At least, not yet. At that moment, Leo approached in his brand new suit. He smiled cheerfully. Good thing you came, Cassia. I knew you loved me. What happened the other day was just a misunderstanding. I looked at him. So, are you comfortable in my room? He laughed. It's beautiful. My wife loves it. I'm thinking of getting some new furniture after the wedding. I nodded. Yes. Update it to your heart's content. The people standing nearby heard this and thought I had softened. My mother-in-law became even more self-satisfied. She turned to her friends. I can see right through her. Where would she go? She'll always come back. A daughter-in-law is a daughter-in-law. She has to be obedient. She has to give in on everything. Listening to these words, I just felt sorry for the countless women who had lived just like me. They were taught to sacrifice, taught to endure, taught to swallow insults to the point they forgot they too had a right to respect. My mother-in-law looked at me and pointed toward the kitchen. Go help serve the dishes. The guests are about to sit down. I didn't move. She frowned. Why aren't you going? I replied softly. I didn't come here to serve food. She smirked. Not to serve food. So you came to apologize then? Of course. I calmly surveyed the tables. Every guest, every curious glance. Everyone was waiting. I knew it would only be a little longer, and everything would change forever. Just then, my phone vibrated. A message from David. We're at the turn into your street. I locked the screen and looked up at my mother-in-law. She was still standing there with a victorious expression. Perhaps in her mind, I had returned to bow my head, admit my mistake, become the obedient daughter-in-law again, accept the loss of my room and my pride, and continue to live under her command. She smiled again. That's right. Know your place. From now on, live as you're supposed to, and don't you dare talk back to your elders. I smiled slightly. The smile was so light and calm that a few people standing nearby began to look confused. At that very moment, the sound of screeching tires was heard from beyond the gate. A black car turned into the alley, followed by another. Many people turned their heads to look. My mother-in-law also frowned and muttered, I wonder which guest is so late. I clutched my handbag slightly. The contract lay neatly inside. I looked directly at my mother-in-law with a calm gaze. It no longer held the vulnerability of the daughter-in-law, who had been kicked out a few days ago. All that remained was the cold composure of someone who held all the cards. The black car stopped right in front of the gate. The laughter and chatter in the yard gradually died down. Everyone was curious about who had arrived. The door opened. First, David stepped out, then Helen, and finally, Mr. Davies, with an associate carrying a black briefcase. My mother-in-law frowned. She looked at me and asked, Your friends? I replied calmly, Yes, these are the people I invited today. She smirked. How thoughtful. You came to apologize and brought friends as witnesses. Well, let's see what kind of show you put on. I said nothing. Mr. Davies and David walked straight into the yard. Approaching me, they nodded politely. Cassia. We have all the documents. I nodded. Thank you. A murmur went through the yard. One of the relatives asked in a low voice, Who are these people? I don't know. Maybe business partners. My mother-in-law looked at my husband. Ethan, do you know them? He shook his head. First time I've seen them. My brother-in-law also approached. He forced a polite smile and greeted them. Good afternoon. We're having a wedding today. If you're guests, please find a seat. David replied politely. Thank you. We're here on important business. Hearing the words important business, my mother-in-law started to get nervous. All business can wait. Today is a celebration. Don't waste our time. Mr. Davies calmly opened the black briefcase. I'm sorry, but this matter needs to be resolved today, because according to the contract, Today is the day of property transfer. My mother-in-law frowned deeply. Mr. Davies looked at me. I gave a slight nod. He slowly took out a folder of documents and placed it on the nearest table. This is the purchase and sale agreement and the deed of transfer for this house. It is legally notarized and has full legal force. The seller is Cassia, the buyer is David. Today, we have come to take possession of the property as per the agreement. A dead silence fell over the yard. Some people thought they had misheard. Someone jumped up from their seat. My mother-in-law stared wide-eyed at the documents, then turned to me. "Did you hear that?" "What did he just say?" I answered calmly. "I heard him very clearly," she screamed. "He's saying this house has been sold." I nodded. "That's right. I sold it." My mother-in-law burst into loud, crazed laughter. "Are you insane? This house belongs to my son. By what right did you sell it?" I looked her straight in the eye. "On the right of the legal owner." The smile vanished from her face instantly. She pointed a finger at me. "You're talking nonsense. This is my son's house. Ethan, tell them." My husband had also turned pale. He looked at me. I silently opened my handbag, took out my folder of documents, and threw it on the table. "See for yourself." With trembling hands, he picked up one paper after another. When his eyes fell on the owner's name, his hands shook even more violently. He muttered, "This can't be. It can't be." My mother-in-law snatched the documents from him. She quickly scanned them. The further she read, the paler her face became. The owner's name was just mine, not her son, not anyone else in their family. Ethan's uncle took the documents to look. He said quietly, "It's all correct. The papers are real." A buzz of voices erupted across the yard. "We thought it was Ethan's house, but it's in the daughter-in-law's name." "Well then, he had every right to sell it." My mother-in-law forcefully threw the documents onto the table. "No, this can't be. You lied to me for 6 years. You deceived our whole family." I looked at her. "I didn't deceive anyone. From the day it was purchased, all the documents were available. It's just that no one in the family ever bothered to look at them." She started to stammer. "But the money to buy the house was my son's." I turned to my husband. "Do you want to tell them the truth?" He lowered his head, unable to say a word. One of the relatives asked, "Ethan, how could this be?" He swallowed hard. The money for the purchase was mostly from Cassia. The wedding yard exploded. Many people looked at my husband in astonishment. Someone whispered, "And all these years, we thought the house was his." My mother-in-law whipped around to her son. "What did you say?" He lowered his head even further. "It's true. It was her money. I only contributed a small part." My mother-in-law staggered and stepped back. She couldn't believe it. For years, she had boasted to everyone about what a wonderful son she had, who had bought such a big house. And today, her own son confirmed that it was all his wife's achievement. At that, Leo started to panic. "Cassia, let's talk about this. It's my wedding day." I looked at him. "And who's joking with you?" He tried to smile. "If you're mad about the room, I'm sorry. I'll move out tomorrow, okay?" I shook my head. "It's too late." He was stunned. "What do you mean?" Before I could answer, David stepped forward. He spoke politely but firmly. "I'm sorry. According to the contract, as of today, this house belongs to me. I ask everyone to cooperate in vacating the premises." My mother-in-law lunged forward. "No, I'm not going anywhere. This is my house." Mr. Davies calmly replied, "By law, this is no longer your family's property. If you continue to obstruct the transfer of ownership, we will be forced to call the police." My mother-in-law pointed a finger at my face. "You traitor! How dare you sell the house?" I stared at her for a long time. Then I said slowly, "The day you kicked me out that door, you told me this wasn't my home. I thought about it very carefully. If this isn't my home, then I have no reason to hold on to it. But you were wrong about one thing. This house never belonged to your family. It was my house, and now I've sold it." A dead silence fell over the yard. My mother-in-law opened her mouth but couldn't utter a word. My husband came closer, his voice trembling. Cassia, please, don't do this. Don't take it this far. I looked at the man who was once my husband. Fear finally appeared in his eyes. But it was too late. I slowly held up the sale contract so everyone could see it and looked directly at my mother-in-law. My voice was calm to the point of being ice cold. This house is sold. I'm asking you to leave the premises. As soon as those words were spoken, the wedding yard seemed to freeze. The music was still playing, but no one paid it any mind. All the guests had jumped to their feet, their gazes shifting between me and my mother-in-law. No one had expected a joyous wedding to turn into such a scene. My mother-in-law was the first to recover. She rushed toward me, her eyes bloodshot. Repeat what you said, I answered calmly. This house has been legally sold. I ask everyone to prepare for the property transfer. She snatched the folder from my hands and tore the documents to shreds. The torn pieces of paper scattered across the yard. Relatives panicked. Some rushed to collect them, others stood frozen. Mr. Davies remained completely unruffled. He opened his briefcase and took out another folder. In a calm voice, he said, "You don't need to tear them up. All original contracts are stored with the title company. These are just copies. Even if you tear up 100 of these, the transaction remains valid." Hearing this, my mother-in-law seemed to lose all her strength. She stumbled backward, muttering, "It can't be. It can't be." At that moment, my husband came and grabbed my arm. "Cassia, please, don't sell it. Let's cancel the contract." I gently freed my arm. "Do you think a real estate contract is a joke? You sign when you want, and cancel when you want?" He grew frantic. I'll pay the penalty. I'll take out a loan." I looked at him. "Where would you get that kind of money?" He fell silent. I knew perfectly well that in 6 years, he had no significant savings. His salary barely covered his expenses, and I had been the one to pay off almost the entire mortgage. David stepped forward. He said very politely, "I sympathize with your family's situation, but I have already paid for the purchase in full. If we terminate the deal, who will compensate me for my damages?" There was no answer. Leo ran up in a panic. "Cassia, I'm begging you. It's my wedding day. Don't do this. At least let us celebrate." I looked at him. "When you took over my bedroom, did you think about my feelings?" He lowered his head. I shook my head. "When you laughed and said, 'You'll be fine in any room,' did you ever think a day would come when you yourself wouldn't have a room to sleep in?" The bride, standing nearby, burst into tears. She turned to her new husband. "You told me this was your house. How did this happen?" My brother-in-law stammered. I thought so too." The young woman sobbed loudly. The bride's family started to gather. Her father came forward, his voice full of anger. "The wedding has just begun, and there's already no house. Your family hid such an important thing. My daughter cannot build a marriage on a lie." My mother-in-law hastily tried to explain. "No, it's just a misunderstanding. The house is still ours." The bride's father took the documents Mr. Davies handed him. He read them very carefully. After reading, he looked at my mother-in-law. "These are real documents. There's no misunderstanding here." Her face turned as white as a sheet. She turned to her son. "Ethan, say something!" My husband stood there, lost. He looked at me. "Cassia, I was wrong. I'm sorry. Let's go home and talk." I scoffed quietly. "Go where?" He choked on his words. "Home. To our home." I looked at him. "What home?" The question made him freeze. Just then, David's phone rang. He listened for a few seconds, then turned to me. "The movers are here. We can start." I nodded. "Please proceed." Soon, a truck stopped at the gate. Several workers in uniform got out. They carried cardboard boxes, dollies, and packing materials. A stir went through the remaining guests. Someone even took out their phone to record. Seeing this, my mother-in-law screamed, "Don't film! Put your phones away!" But it was too late. The scene was already being captured by numerous lenses. One of the aunts sighed quietly. If only she hadn't kicked Cassia out back then. Another uncle shook his head. The girl lived in this family for so many years, never did anything wrong. My mother-in-law turned to them. Are you defending her? No one answered, because they all now understood who was at fault. 2 police officers appeared at the gate. The local precinct had sent them at the lawyer's request to ensure a peaceful property transfer. They entered and greeted everyone politely. After examining the legal documents provided by Mr. Davies, one officer turned to my husband's family. We ask the family to cooperate. The sale is legal. Please gather your personal belongings to avoid unnecessary conflict. This confirmation was the final nail in the coffin of my husband's family's hopes. No one could deny the truth anymore. The house they had considered theirs by right now officially belonged to someone else. After the officer's words, a heavy atmosphere descended upon the wedding yard. Tables laden with food, half-drunk glasses of wine. Someone had turned off the music. The only sounds were the wind rustling through the yard and the astonished gasps of the few remaining onlookers. My mother-in-law sank heavily onto a plastic chair. Her hands trembled as she muttered endlessly, "It can't be. This is my house. This is my house." But now, no one sympathized with her. The relatives who had recently been on her side were silent. Some were quietly packing their bags, others looking for an excuse to leave. Ethan's elderly uncle approached me. He sighed quietly. "Forgive me. I blamed you then too. But now I know what really happened." I nodded politely. "It's all right." He looked at my mother-in-law and said slowly, "People only understand the value of what they have when they lose it. It's a shame that enlightenment comes too late." With that, he turned and left. One by one, people got up, said their goodbyes, and departed. No one wanted to stay in that suffocating atmosphere. In less than half an hour, the once crowded yard was half empty. The banquet tables were full, the flowers bright, but all the joy had vanished without a trace. The bride sat on a chair by the door, her makeup smeared with tears. Her parents were constantly consoling her. Finally, her father stood up. He looked at my brother-in-law. "Today, I don't blame you, son. But your family. To hide something this important. My daughter can't start a marriage with this." Leo panicked. "I really didn't know." The bride's father shook his head. "Whether you knew or not doesn't matter anymore." He turned to his daughter. "Pack your things. We're going home." The bride looked at her husband with red, tear-filled eyes. "I need time to think." With those words, she and her parents walked out the gate. Leo ran after her, calling her name, but she didn't even turn back. I watched her go, a heavy sigh in my heart. If only that young man had known how to respect others from the beginning, perhaps it wouldn't have come to this. Inside the house, the movers had begun packing. They worked with professional efficiency. Each box was clearly labeled. My husband's family's personal belongings were carried out to the street, one by one. My mother-in-law saw them open her closet. She ran over. "Don't touch that. Those are my things." A mover replied politely, "Ma'am, we're just helping move your things to the truck. We won't take anything that doesn't belong to you." She fell silent, just watching as they packed each item. Every box carried out of the house seemed to strip away another piece of her pride. My husband silently went up to the bedroom. A few minutes later, he came down with a small suitcase. It was the same one I had bought him for our first trip after the wedding. He had been so happy then, hugging it and saying, "We'll travel the world together." Today, he was using that same suitcase to leave the house he thought he would live in for the rest of his life. He approached me, his voice hoarse. "Cassia, can we talk for a minute?" I glanced at the clock and nodded. We went out to the backyard, where a lilac bush I had once planted with my own hands was growing. It had flourished, its flowers covering the entire wall. He looked around, his voice trembling. "You said when it bloomed, it would be beautiful." I smiled. "Yes. It's just that I never got to see it in full bloom." He hung his head. "I'm sorry. I know it's too late to say anything now, but I really don't want to lose you." I looked at him calmly. "Do you know what I regret the most?" He shook his head. "It's not the room, not the house, not even the 6 years of my youth. What I regret most is that I once believed you would stand by my side." He closed his eyes, tears rolling down his cheeks. He said very quietly, "I was a coward." "I don't deny it," I replied softly. "Yes. You never dared to defend the one you were supposed to protect. Even when I was being kicked out onto the street. You chose to stand behind your mother," he sobbed. "Give me one more chance. I'll change." I shook my head. Some mistakes can be fixed. But there are other mistakes that only need to be made once. I don't have any faith left to start over. He bowed his head low and couldn't say another word. I returned to the front. By then, almost all the belongings had been moved outside. A truck stood at the gate, packed to the brim. My mother-in-law stood beside it with a lost expression, looking at the house, then at the number plate. Her gaze was empty. Perhaps for the first time in her life, she felt what it was like to lose everything because of her own pride. David approached me. "We're almost done," I nodded. "Thank you for your patience," he smiled. "I'm just exercising my rights. To be honest, I admire you. Not everyone could handle this so coolly." I smiled faintly, probably because I've already cried all my tears. There are none left today. When the last box was loaded, Mr. Davies came to inform me that the handover was complete. From that moment, the house officially belonged to David. David accepted the set of keys from my hand and shook it politely. "Thank you. I wish you the best in starting your new life." I nodded. "And I wish you and your family many happy memories here." He smiled and went back inside to inspect the house one more time. The gates slowly closed. My mother-in-law stared at them for a long time. She took a few steps forward as if to enter, but stopped. She no longer had the right to cross that threshold. The truck started moving, carrying away all of my husband's family's possessions. No one knew where they would sleep that night. No one knew what would happen to them tomorrow. I only knew one thing. The family that had once thrown me out with absolute arrogance was now standing on the street with their luggage, looking at a house they had no right to call their own. 3 months later, my life had changed in ways I never expected. I moved out of the hotel and rented a small apartment near my office, not too spacious, not luxurious, but every morning I woke up feeling a sense of peace. No more shouting, no more sidelong glances, no more need to please everyone. I was simply living for myself. I divided the money from the house sale into several parts. One portion went into a savings account, another I invested. With the remaining funds, I started a business consulting firm with 2 friends. Many people thought I only knew how to endure. But after leaving that marriage, I finally had the chance to prove my real abilities. The company grew faster than expected. The first clients came from contacts I had built over many years. They trusted my work ethic and reputation. In just a few months, our revenue exceeded our projections. One morning, I was in a meeting when my assistant came in. "Cassia, someone is here to see you." I looked up. "Who is it?" She replied, "Ethan." I froze for a couple of seconds, then said calmly, "Show him in." The door opened, and my ex-husband walked in. In just 3 months, he had lost a noticeable amount of weight. His cheeks were hollowed, his clothes were no longer as neat as they used to be, and the confidence in his eyes was gone. He stood in front of my desk and asked quietly, "How are you?" I smiled. "I'm good. And you?" He gave a sad laugh. "Not so good." I gestured for him to sit. My assistant brought in 2 glasses of water and silently closed the door, leaving us alone. He looked around the office. "Nice office." "Thank you," I replied. He looked down. "I heard your company is doing great." I nodded. "It's quite stable." He was silent for a long time. Finally, he said, "I quit my job." I showed no surprise. He continued, "After that incident, everyone at the firm found out. A lot of clients heard about it too. I just couldn't work anymore. I ended up resigning." I listened silently, making no comment. He looked at me. "Aren't you going to ask anything?" I replied softly. "Everyone is responsible for their own choices." He gave a bitter smile. "Yes, it was my choice. I chose my mother's side and lost everything." Silence hung in the office. Suddenly, he asked, "Do you know how Mom is doing after that day?" I shook my head. He sighed. "She's renting a small room. Every day she talks about you." At first, she blamed you, then she blamed me. And in the end, she started blaming only herself. I remained silent. He went on. She says if she hadn't kicked you out that day, if she had just let you stay in that room, none of this would have happened. I looked out the window at the cars passing by. No amount of regret, no matter how sincere, can turn back time. He added, and Leo. His wife left to her parents' house a week after the wedding. She still refuses to come back. Her family is demanding they live separately, or they'll get a divorce. I just nodded slightly. He smiled sadly. Are you not interested at all? I looked at him. That's your life. It has nothing to do with me anymore. He lowered his head. Yeah, I know. He took a small box out of his pocket and placed it on the table. Opening the lid, he revealed my wedding ring. I kept it the day you left. I want to return it now. I looked at the ring, a symbol of a marriage I once believed would bring me happiness. I closed the lid. Keep it. You don't need to return it. He was surprised. Why? I smiled. Because to me, it doesn't mean anything anymore. He clenched his fist tightly. Cassia, I know I have no right to ask, but I still want to know. Could you ever give me a chance to start over? I looked at the man before me for a long time. If this question had been asked before the day I rolled my suitcase out the gate, I might have cried. My heart might have wavered. I might have agreed. But now, all I felt was peace. I answered slowly. Remember when I asked you, if your sister were treated this way, would you tolerate it? He nodded slightly. I remember. I couldn't answer that day. I continued. Today, I can't answer you either. I can't give an answer that goes against my own heart. He looked at me with a gaze full of fragile hope. I said very quietly, I don't hold any anger toward you. Honestly, I've already forgiven you. But forgiving doesn't mean going back. Some doors, once closed, should stay closed forever. He closed his eyes, a tear rolling down his cheek. He nodded slightly. I understand. He stood up and gave me a slight bow. Thank you. At least you once loved me sincerely. I smiled. Yes, I once did. He turned and walked toward the door. After a few steps, he stopped. Without turning back, he said quietly, I wish you happiness. I replied, I wish you peace too. The door closed. I sat there for a long time. There was no more pain. No more regret. Only a feeling of lightness. As if I had shed a heavy burden I had carried for years. That evening, I got a call from a real estate agent. She informed me that the closing on a cottage I had recently put a deposit on was complete. I could move in next week. I hung up with a smile and looked at the blue sky outside my window. I suddenly realized that life is sometimes very fair. It can take away a roof over your head, only to later give you a real home. A place where you don't have to serve anyone. A place where your value is measured by your self-respect, your courage, and your right decisions. A week later, I officially moved into my new house. It wasn't a luxurious villa or the biggest mansion in town, but it was a home bought with the fruits of my own labor. There were no bitter memories, no shouting, no days spent trying to please others. The very first morning, I brewed myself a cup of coffee, opened all the windows, and sunlight flooded the living room. I took a deep breath. For the first time in years, I felt what true freedom was. My phone buzzed. It was my mom. So, have you moved in? I smiled. Yes, Mom. When are you and Dad coming to visit? On the other end, she laughed happily. We'll come over tonight with a housewarming dinner. I'll make your favorite dish. I replied softly. I'll be waiting. That evening, my parents' car pulled up to the gate. As soon as my dad got out, he looked around the house. He smiled. Finally. My daughter has a real home. I hugged him and said quietly, this time, I'll take care of it. My mom brought in bags of food. She walked through the house and said cheerfully, a house doesn't have to be huge. The important thing is that it's filled with laughter. The three of us had dinner together in that warm atmosphere, something I hadn't had in years. No one judged me. No one forced me to sacrifice. No one took my efforts for granted. After dinner, My dad put an envelope of money on the table. I was surprised. Dad? What's this? He smiled kindly. A housewarming gift. I pushed the envelope back. I have more than enough. He shook his head. It's not because you're lacking. It's because we want to share in this joy with you. I took the envelope, tears welling up in my eyes. So this is what it feels like to be truly loved. A few days later, my company held a party to celebrate signing a contract with a major partner. It was a very formal event. After my speech, a colleague approached me. Cassia, someone wants to talk to you. I turned and saw my former mother-in-law. She was standing in a corner of the hall. She had aged significantly. There was more gray in her hair, and her face looked exhausted. She approached me, her voice much quieter than before. Cassia, can I talk to you for a minute? I looked at her and nodded. We went out to the garden behind the restaurant. For a long time, neither of us said a word. Finally, she spoke. Forgive me. I remained silent. She continued. I used to believe you were obligated to sacrifice everything for your husband's family. I thought everything you did was your duty. Only after losing everything did I realize that no one is obligated to endure forever. Her voice trembled. I was wrong. Very wrong. If I could turn back time, I would treat you completely differently. I looked at the woman who had once caused me so much pain. There was no trace of her former arrogance, only an old person full of regret. I said softly, I accept your apology. She looked up, her eyes red. Really? I nodded. I don't want to carry hatred for the rest of my life. But there's one thing. I'm not coming back. She lowered her head. I understand. This is the price I have to pay. I looked at her. I hope that in the future, you will treat whoever enters your life well. Don't make anyone leave the way I did. She wiped her tears and nodded slightly. I will remember. At that moment, my phone rang. It was the office. Everyone was waiting for me for a commemorative photo. I looked at my ex-mother-in-law. I have to go, she smiled. Go on. Don't keep people waiting. I gave a slight bow, turned, and walked away. This time, there were no attachments, no heaviness in my heart, only a sense of peace. When I re-entered the hall, everyone applauded. The CEO of the partner company shook my hand. Congratulations. I look forward to a long collaboration. I smiled. Undoubtedly. The camera flashes went off one after another. At that moment, I suddenly remembered the day I walked out of the old house with my suitcase. If I had bowed my head that day, if I had continued to endure, perhaps today I would still be a woman living in humiliation. Fortunately, I made a different choice. That evening, I drove back to my new home. The sky was full of stars, the street was quiet. As soon as I opened the gate, I smelled the scent of jasmine from the corner of the yard. It was a bush my mother had planted a few days ago. I stood for a few minutes, looking at the warm yellow light pouring from the windows, and a sense of tranquility washed over me. I opened the door with my key and entered my home. No more asking for permission. No more looking at disapproving faces. No more fear of being kicked out tomorrow. I put down my handbag, poured a glass of water, and sat by the window, looking into the darkness. Out there, life goes on. Someone will make more mistakes. Someone will have more regrets. But for me, all the suffering ended the day I learned to respect myself. I realized that a woman can lose many things in this life. She can lose time, she can lose money, she can lose a marriage, but she must never, ever lose her self-respect. Because as long as self-respect remains, a person always has a chance to rise again. I smiled slightly, looking at my brightly lit home, and then gently closed the door behind me, leaving the tears in the past and opening a new life, calm, free, and belonging only to me.